Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are. So welcome to Convex Conference. So I want to share with you today the value of a global content strategy and methodology to implement it. So hopefully in a couple of weeks from now, during the live Convex sessions, we'll have time to discuss more in detail, and we'll work with your input to see how it's going to fit, how it might fit for you. Let me first introduce WHP. So you can see the history. We've got this thing on the slide, so I won't read it. So basically, we are a data specialized localization company, and for the last 4 years, we've been involved with consulting based on the request of our customers that requested us to help them implement best practices on localization and localization ready content. So for the last 4 years, we've been supporting customers and in their how to build localization ready data and their global content strategy. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. Let me introduce me a little bit further. So I've been working as a consultant and business manager in different industries, so business process optimization and system migration. And for the last 17 years, I'm heading WHP, so the localization consulting company. And for the last 5 years, so I've been leading the WHP consulting practice. So let's talk about global content. So global content is content which is delivered to all target markets with a consistent efficiency. So global content includes all content processes, including offering, delivery, up to including localization, obviously. When we talk about target markets, we don't just talk about translation, but also adaptation to the country regulations and addresses. For instance, you might translate it to French, but then publish for Canada and for France. And then what you publish eventually won't be exactly the same, although it's going to be in French. And say about consistent efficiency, it's important that we have quality, consistency, but also all provisions which are included in the content, and which also means maintainability and user experience, and that's in all languages in all countries. So you know maturity models. So you certainly have heard about maturity models, and certainly you have ranked your own organization against these maturity models. So first one is about information process maturity. It was developed by CIDM several years ago. So you have different levels from ad hoc, rudimentary, organized and repeatable, managed and sustainable, optimizing, depending on wherever you are. You can see I summarized a little bit. It's more complex, but I summarized some characteristics of companies depending on the level where they are in. You might also have heard about another one. Which is a localization maturity model. This was built by a consulting firm called Common Sense Advisory. So they're just focusing on localization. So different levels as well, five levels from reactive, repeatable, managed, optimized to transparent. And again, I summarized a little bit. It's more complex, but I summarized the main characteristics of companies there. So these maturity models are very interesting because they give you an idea of to benchmark your companies against best practices and to know what's to be done if you want to go to a higher maturity model. So what are the limitations of these maturity models? There are several limitations. First, not all content flows at the same level. So if you look, for instance, of your basically your TechPub is usually at a managed and sustainable level. It's been there for some time, but you also have some other content flows, and not just TechPubs. Very often you have software, you have a graphics, you have training content, but you might also have plenty of different content flows. Sometimes it's small ones that you don't consider at the very high level, but when you dig into today, you're going to realize that there are plenty of information flow which are used in global content. Another limitation is that content cannot be a higher maturity than its components. So, for instance, in this diagram, you can see that TechPub is importing software and graphics, and you can see that if software and graphics are not at the same high level of TechPub, it means that TechPub eventually is not at the level where we expect, but it's at a lower level. And same thing for localization, that comes afterwards. And so you can have a high level of maturity in localization, but if the content is not at a higher maturity level, then the overall content, global content process is not at the high level. So there we have to get the content at the same maturity level. You can implement, and many customers are doing that. You can implement a unified content strategy to make all content, let's say, managed with the same process at a high maturity level. And when it comes to getting localization and TechPub or content, speaking source content at the same level, that's what we call global content strategy, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. So this global content methodology is something we've been implementing for the last 4 years with many different customers. We've been implementing successfully. Many of these customers were using DITA mostly for one very, I think it may be BAs because we are a DITA specialist, but it also because when you work on content strategy, very often eventually you end up with DITA implementation. They are working in different industries, so medical devices, pharmaceutical, automotive, software. There are different sizes. We've been working with customers with 1 technical writer up to 200 technical writers, few or many languages, from 2 or to 50 languages, up to one of our customers we've been supporting is 120 languages when we include all variants in different languages. So variant is, for instance, if you deal for Spanish for Argentina, Spanish for Chile, or French for Africa. And we've been dealing with many different levels of maturity with DITA and with localization. Some of them had been using DITA for a long time, but just started localization. Some others have been localizing for many years, but were just migrating to DITA. And some others were veterans of DITA and had been localizing for plenty of years. So this methodology applies to whatever industry, whatever size, whatever number of languages, and whatever your maturity. This methodology is based on a pragmatic approach, step-by-step improvement, and to deliver a very short-term ROI. So we are not planning to do revolutions. We're not, but just to deliver value and in very short time for your organization. So what outcome can we expect from this global content strategy? So we've usually rank, let's say, have criteria, the 4 criteria we are tracking. Usually it's the offering effort, the localization effort. And when I say localization effort, it's not just the cost of localization if you have a vendor, of a number of the time spent by your translators if you are working with internal translators, is the overall cost, including the localization management, including all the maintenance, stuff like that. Exceptions. We are tracking the number of exceptions because that's quite important, because the higher level of your maturity, the less exception you should have. So it's a good indicators of the maturity of your process. And then time to market, which is something it's getting more and more important for customers. And when you migrate to DITA, usually you expect to have a shorter time to market. So we've been looking at the effect on this global content strategy on these criteria. So on short term, you see that if we take all of them from 100, a base of 100, you see that in short term, the offering effort and localization effort will increase. It makes sense. You update your processes, you update your content, so it's gonna slightly increase. We can see that in short term, exceptions are already decreasing, and time to market is still high. On the long run, depending on let's say we are talking about 6 months to 1 year maximum. We'll see that the offering effort is going down. some content has been optimized, so the authoring effort will go down. Localization effort will go significantly down from 30 to 40%. Exceptions are decreased usually by at least 50%, and time to market can be decreased, can be divided by 5 or 6, especially when you move to agile methodology. And beyond that, you get a significant higher quality of content and efficiency. So higher customer experience, higher consistency, maybe more channels, more features you can provide as part of your content. So how does it work? We have it started by a master plan. This master plan is built on content on business objectives which are provided by the management or by the organization, and based on the current practices. Sorry, I come back to my sorry. Okay, so the master plan is a cornerstone of this methodology. The master plan starts with business objectives provided by the organization. So the business objective can be very different depending on the organization. So I'm listing some of them we had. So some customers are looking for a higher maturity, some of us are looking for unified content, but these are more internal business objectives. But very often they want to be agile, to be shorter time to market. Migration can be another business objective. Some companies are experiencing merger and acquisition, whether they acquire a company or whether they are getting acquired. So it's important that the content follows this strategy. Sometimes they start localizing. Sometimes they want to send to multi-brand, to more channels, to competitors, to benchmark with competitors. So it's something we often see. Some companies which are insulated, they would like to see where they stand with against their competitors. Then we'll map the current practices, what's being done with content and what's being done right now with localization. And we have to go very much into details. Sometimes, let's say, customers believe they know exactly their current practices, but it's just the high level, let's say, project or how it's going to work. But in detail, when we go more in detail, we'll find we need to map more in detail how the exceptions are handled, how the different type of flow are handled. So that's very important. And then we'll see the pain points. So pain points is all the things that make the process a little bit hectic, where people have to deal with to innovate, to find ways to solve these exceptions, and that's where we lose efficiency. So we definitely want to reduce the number of pain points or exceptions. So we start from documented issues or exceptions. Some of them we do the review. I think a good point is to review the content and the transition memory. From the content and from the transition memory, there's a lot of information you can get from the process. And then I think it's worth interviewing stakeholders, not just the stakeholders managing the localization, managing the content, but all those which are consuming. So you can talk with the subject matter experts which are reviewing the content. You can talk to the business internal customers which are asking for documentation and publishing the documentation. But in the localization, you might also talk to the translators, to the in-country reviewers, so or to the publishers, those which are publishing the translated content. So all these interviews are very often very valuable, because you're going to learn a lot of things that are not written in documented issues or exceptions. So from this all this input, you have to draw a detailed photography of current practices. If you want to optimize a process, you need to know exactly in detail how this process is working. Then you're going to write a complete set. You're going to identify a complete set of practical recommendations, very practical recommendations. These recommendations can apply on content. You can apply, improve the offering style guide. You can at the same time train your, identify that you need to train a little bit further your technical writers. Unified content, maybe you're going to see that your graphics or your integrated, your software UI is not properly integrated in your documentation. You're going to work on quality control. Maybe you're going to realize that your content is not at consistent enough quality, so which creates problems for localization. And then integration with content sources. Maybe you're integrating content which is coming from a third party, whether software publishers, whether the manufacturing department, marketing department, or outsiders, maybe some third party suppliers. And then recommendations as well on localization process. So you can decide that you want your localization process to become agile or continuous instead of being waterfall. For instance, waterfall means I'm translating documents when documents are ready, and there might be a lot of content. Agile might mean I'm translating content as early as it is designed. So that can save. You can obviously imagine that that's going to save a lot of money and time, obviously. You can work on instructions on terminology management. That's something which is rather important, because it's very often we realize that most of the exceptions and corrections afterwards are related to terminology management. Then some quality control, and then some automation. You might realize that plenty of manual tasks are performed, and they create, it's not only a loss of time, but it's also a source of errors. And you can have recommendations as well on organization and resources. So how to make people work together or talk together, if you're missing some resources, or if you need to train resources. And each of these recommendations should have an impact analysis to see how they impact with each other, how they impact on translation, how they impact on the way the content is published, whether they have an impact in cost, in quality, ROI. So it's very important that we know exactly what's at stake with each recommendation. So we have performed our master plan using the current practices and the business objectives, as we can see here. So next step is, from all these recommendations, is to prioritize these recommendations. Because these recommendations, they all have a different impact, as we've seen. They require a certain effort, but they also very often depend on each other. So you have some of them which might be bundled, because it makes sense that they are together. Some of them which might be exclusive from each other, because if you do one, you should not do the other one, or there might be sequential. So if you had done one, you need, prior to do the number 10, you have to do the number 8 before. So they all have to be prioritized, and we advocate in this prioritization is to advocate for iterative process. Don't be too ambitious, and don't try to do all of them at the same time. Go step by step with a few of them, and check the result, and then start a new ones. And we also recommend to start by quick wins. So quick wins are very important, and you're going to find many of them. So quick wins are very important to demonstrate the value to not only to the team, but also to the sponsors, and to get their buy-in. Then once you have demonstrated that this process was worth it, then it's going to be very easy to implement other ones, and especially those which are a little bit more challenging or more demanding, maybe. So we have done our master plan, we have done prioritization, and afterwards we need to drive a project, to implement a pilot, because obviously when you do a change, you don't do a change on the whole of the project. So you start with a single project as relevant as possible, and you implement some of the changes, maybe manually at that stage, and then you check the value that it's actually working as you were expecting. Then you have to deploy. At that stage, you might have to do some scripting, some automation to make sure that it's the deployment, but you might also define that the deployment will not be done as once, but will be done as the content is maintained, or as a, so the deployment strategy will also depend on the prioritization. When you do a prioritization, you will identify which strategy is the deployment strategy for this modification recommendations. And then you evaluate, you measure. It's very important that you measure so that you can demonstrate to whoever is interested that the benefits of these recommendations. And maybe the four metrics we've been considering. So the time to market, the number of exceptions, localization effort, and offering effort. These are worth measuring. And then it's a never-ending story, because then afterwards you've implemented those, you might still have pain points. You might even have introduced new pain points based on recommendations. And then you had some recommendations which were left that you didn't implement yet from a previous master plan. And beyond that, business objectives might have changed because you might have new business objectives coming from your organization. So it's a never-ending story. So updating the master plan, prioritization of features, pilot projects, deployment, evaluation, and so on. So never ending. And then obviously all that has to be supported by support processes. So project management, you can see that plenty of small changes involving plenty of different parts in the organization, your localization vendor, your localization management, your technical writers, your software, the publishers, and so forth. So it's plenty of change management is very important. You have to the resources, you have to tell the people up front, you inform the people up front, to tell them, to keep them aware of the progress, and to, of course, to communicate the outcome of a result. So it's very important. It's also based on documentations. The higher level you get in the maturity models, the higher documentation set is important is. So it means that there's going to be it's going to be a lot of documentation, especially of the current practices, because we've seen that the current practices were not very often documented. So it's very important that to keep them up to date. Instructions as well, a full set of documentation for each of the small steps of the content. Measurement, to have measurement in place, as I said, evaluation to be able to measure exactly what's going on. And then technology, because we'll see that some of them will be supported by technology. There will be some automation, but there might be some technology as well in the content, in conversions, in the way it's published, maybe some specialization, some processing, some stuff like that, which will be implemented in as part of this global content strategy. So, and then the outcome will be, as we mentioned, so with just offering effort, we decrease the offering effort, we significantly decrease the localization effort, we divide by 2 the exceptions, and we can divide up to by 5 or 6 the time to market. And this is an average of what we've reached on many customers. And this is, if you never undertook such a revision of your process and your strategy, global content strategy, this is easily achievable by all organizations. So a few examples that we've implemented. So we have a pharmaceutical content publishers. They wanted to set up a new localization process, including the new TMS and inline scientific in context scientific review. And the result was 71% of localization cost reduction. You've seen I was stating that in average the 30 to 40%. This one was 71%. But we focused mainly on localization process, improving the localization process. For a software publisher, the business objective were a little bit different. So the business objective was to reduce time to market, and we externalized the UI. We automated some graphics localization, and as a result, they have an agile authoring and localization. SIMship, which SIMship is simultaneous shipment to when we deliver the full set of content and this documentation into all languages at the same time. It took an average of 15 weeks. Now it's only 3 weeks. And there's far easier UI maintenance in all languages. So you see that there we divided the time to market, which was a business objective, by 5. Then another example is industrial automation. So for one of our customers, they had in their unified content strategy, they realized that they wanted their content to be to include videos or to be supported by videos, or that videos and tutorials should be part of their content strategy. But then the localization was an issue because it was extremely expensive and taking a lot of time. So what we built for them is a data single sourcing of subtitles and voiceover, so that now they can do all tutorials in 10 languages with exactly no extra cost compared to their previous methodology. So instead of having all these tutorials only in English, now they've got them in 10 languages for no extra cost. So these are examples. You can see that they demonstrate that based on, let's say, the same global content strategy might end up in plenty different recommendations, definitely based depending on the practices, but also depending on the business objectives. So what are the benefits for the organization? So first benefit for the organization is breaking silos, and we all know that it's very good to break silos. Or it's not exactly breaking silos, but letting the silos work with each other and communicate with each other, because localization will still remain a specific business, and content management going to be another specific. But those two silos will work together and will collaborate together. So for the content teams, it's going to be a permanent support for unified content strategy. Sometimes they are struggling with unified content strategy because the localization is not supporting. In that case, localization and the global content strategy is supporting the unified content strategy. They're going to be in higher level, higher maturity level. So better documentation, better training, better processes, better onboarding when they hire new technical writers, higher content quality, that's for sure. And for the localization team, higher productivity, higher quality, that's very important. They have more power in the organization because they, let's say, people will realize that they need, they have their word to say, and it's very important. I just give you an idea. Maybe I should have told that before. When you localize into, let's say, the cost of localizing into 3 languages is the same order of magnitude of the cost of creating the content. So it's very important when you localize, for instance, in 10 languages, you're going to spend twice more in localization than you have spent in technical writing. So it's better. It's very important to try to optimize the whole process. And for localization team, it's going to be a pacified relationship. Just think about the localization team. The localization team is in between the product team, which is designing the product of the documentation team, which is writing the documentation on this product, and which is sometimes the quality maybe sometimes can be a little bit better, or they are sometimes a little bit delayed. On the other hand, the marketing is consuming their localization, so they are always willing to have a high quality and something on time. But also they are also struggling with the country organizations, because the country organization sometimes are involved in the linguistic review. On top of that, they are relying on the quality of this of the content and the efficiency on the content for the performance. So the localization team usually is in between under high pressure. With this global content strategy, the localization team gets pacified relationship and gets more power in this overall organization. So they're getting a lot of benefit from this global content strategy. So who should drive this global content strategy? So what does it require? It requires a strong leadership to manage, because this project, because it involves a lot of different stakeholders and in the organization. It requires a very strong localization expertise. As I mentioned, the cost and the efficiency where you can save a lot is in localization. So understanding the localization, best practices, technologies are a key. Involved in localization community, it's very important to know the best practices and to remain up to date with best practices. It's a technology, localization is an industry which is progressing a lot. Maybe you've heard about machine translation, about some quality control, automated. So it's progressing a lot. So it's very important to keep up to speed on that. This person has to have a relevant expertise in content management, so structured content, multi-channel publishing, all the constraints and all the technologies, all the practices attached to the content management. It has to be to have an experience and in project and change management, because it's eventually that's a project. It's a change project, so it's important that these projects are managed properly. Otherwise, they're going to fail. And when we look at detail, we realize that domain expertise is not that much relevant. It's more an issue of processes, change, localization, offering, and not that much about pharmaceutical or software publisher or electronic components. It's not important. So who can bring all these expertise assets and to the project? Technically, it should be someone grown from a localization. Once again, the localization weight is the most important in this project. So it should be grown from a localization team. Although it might not be neutral when it comes to analyzing the issues and exceptions. It can be someone recruited for the job. You take someone from outside, which has got localization expertise, a relevant expertise in content management, and you hire this person. The project might not be full-time. Driving this project might not be full-time. So then this person will be driven, will be as well invited to contribute to operational projects, either in technical writing or in localization. Then it's going to lose his focus. It's going to lose his neutrality, and then on the long run, it might be disconnected from best practices and the industries. You can also hire ad hoc consultants from outside. They can bring the localization expertise. They can bring the experience in project management. They can remain in touch with the market. But then you have to make sure that they remain permanently, because a project is not a one-off project. It's a permanent project. So you have to find a consultant which is ready to support you on the long run. So this is basically what I wanted to share with you. So implementing a global content strategy can help you smoothen all your process, can be more efficient, decrease cost, but at the same time, let's say, fulfill the business objectives and shine in your organization, because the outcome is that the content team and localization team will be far more exposed in the organization, but it's going to be beneficial for them. So that's what we have. What we are proposing. It's not something we have implemented, but we are sharing with you the value, and you can very well implement by yourself. I'm looking forward to the Convex discussions, where we'll be able to bring your questions, bring your experience, bring your feedback, your challenges. And hopefully we'll have a very valuable discussion. So get prepared to that. I will be prepared as well. So enjoying this Convex conference as much as we can, and getting the highest value from this conference. So thanks a lot. You can reach me if in between you can reach me. You want to have some more information, some questions. You can reach me by mail. You've got my mail address here, or you can find me very easily on LinkedIn. That's my favorite way of communication. Okay, enjoy for your reflection until then, and looking forward to talking to you on Convex session. Goodbye.